Hey everybody, it's Elon from Inside Fighting, and this episode is me going down the rabbit hole of Italian knife fighting. So stay tuned, it gets very interesting. I know you're going to enjoy it. Here we go. All right, so on my last video, someone commented about Italian knife fighting styles. I started going down the rabbit hole, and I came across this guy, Lajolo, who has this family history of knife fighting. He says he has the only state-recognized Italian. Why am I doing that why in parentheses? Italian state recognized knife fighting system. And I have to say, I started looking at all his videos and it's super interesting. Now, one thing I noticed right away is there was a certain eskrima element to his movements. And then when I went on his website, he said he trained eskrima, but he also said he trained under his family in the traditional knife fighting style that he has passed on and carried on now. Lajolo, knife fighting. And so it is legit different, by the way. I just want to say that off the bat. It's legit different than any Filipino martial art I've ever seen. There's just flavors of Filipino martial arts, but this is truly its own thing, which is super unique. I'm super happy to find it. I'm going to keep saying the word super. Anyway, here, you know me, I like to put videos. So let's just put up these videos right here and add them to the stage. He's doing some basic hand movements. And what's cool about him is he's constantly moving the blade in close proximity off his arm to open and close it. Now, he's also keeping his hand, his free hand, I don't know if you'll notice this, protecting vital parts like his neck, his underside, his head. So the hand is constantly doing stuff. Now, what I like about the way he's drilling here, and I'll just skip ahead a little bit, is he's actually talking about drawing the blade from natural positions. Like you see, I talk about this a lot. You know, I talk about how if you're going to stand in a defensive posture, do this, do this, do this. These are things that he's actually discussing in the video. What's super nice is that he's doing it with a blade and how to deploy the blade. So if you look, he has quick movements to deploy the blade into those positions. And a lot of the stuff is drawing the blade. This is something that Filipino martial arts is lacking. We don't really discuss as often, you know, modern day American knives, which are usually these kind of flip blades. And so if you're practicing, you should practice with the knife you carry and you should practice deploying your blade. That's a huge part of knife fighting. The person who can deploy their blade faster will have the advantage. I like that he also does these weird kind of movements that I haven't seen before. The blade kind of hugs his arm. Now, I don't necessarily think this is the best idea because if you have a double-sided blade, you're rubbing a live blade against your arm. And, you know, obviously you're not going to get cut if you do it at that speed, but he obviously has his reasons. I don't train the style. I find the movements unique. You know, I would never put the hard edge of a blade on especially I have a rule in blade fighting. You never want to, let me make myself a little large here. You never want to have anything cutting where, you know, there's a rule where the sun don't shine. That's kind of a weird rule of knife fighting. So if I were to stand, the sun's not going to hit me here. It's not going to hit me under my armpits. It's not going to hit me in my groin area. And it's also realistically not going to hit these underside of my arms. Those are oddly, the parts that are vital to protect when you're fighting, where the sun don't shine, right? This area here, the sun's not hitting me here, is very, very important to protect. These parts here are very important to protect. My armpits are very important to protect. There's just more arteries and veins. And so, you know, I wouldn't rub a live blade there, but his movements, again, are something I haven't seen before. So I really like that. And I'm sure there's a reason for it. It does definitely offer you a quick change of position from the blade being in a extended to an ice pick grip. So a traditional grip to an ice pick grip. He switches a lot with that, and he switches hands a lot. And you're going to see in a lot of other videos here that he does a lot of cool stuff. So this is what really reminded me of eskrima, right? He's going into almost like a hubad position. What I do like about him that you don't see a lot of Filipino guys do, my teacher did this in Filipino martial arts. He just really focuses on repeated stabs. He doesn't care if he changes the angle. There's something in Filipino martial arts that they try and be too pretty. And they're if we stabbed you here once, we should move to a new angle because it just looks cooler for the sake of flow. But the truth is, if you could just keep stabbing someone in the same location, just do it. That's a more reality-based approach to knife fighting. So kudos to him. But this segment of his training 100% reminds me of Filipino martial arts. He's stepping off on an angle. He's catching it kind of like a hubad drill here. He's passing low line or high line. Anyone who's done Filipino martial arts for any relevant amount of time knows these movements and these drills. What he does really nice also is he frames. He has really good structure. Again, when he grabs to control and protect his head, he's doing this. He's making sure that his hand has contact, because if your hand is here or your hand is here, it can move. But when you create structure, it cannot move. So kudos to him for having really good structure. There's a lot I like about this guy, a lot. And again, it's something I haven't seen before.
2, 3,
Oh, here
4,
we go.
5.
He's
So
speaking English here.
you see, every time when you move, you ready?
So that's super cool. Like these movements, man. I can't. I mean, for solo drills of just moving with the blade and blade handling and coordination. Now, what I will say is what you see him doing here is not how he spars. He's obviously doing these drills for deploying the blade fast, for changing grip fast. So I'll show you videos of him sparring after. Those are the last things I'm going to show you. Oh, by the way, guys, I have a surprise for you. This guy encapsulates Italian knife fighting more than anyone because of the next video I'm going to show you. If there was ever a video that would be made that would capture what Italian knife fighting is, it's this. I actually might turn on the volume. Oh, it's getting serious now. We should go back into it. By the way, I just have to mention, I love that they're using straight edge razors that you would shave with in this. I'm a huge fan of bringing back straight edge razors. Look at that. Peaky Blinder hat. It's got a straight edge razor. I respect this style so much. I mean, if I'm going to train a martial art, I want to dress up super cool and just wear Peaky Blinders hats and fight with straight edge razors. That is the culmination of martial arts, in my opinion. And they actually do a good little demo here. Obviously, guys, all joking aside, this is a, fun little demo that they're putting on to capture the culture and the history of it. And I think they did a great job. They did a what I might call a wonderful job. And as you can see here, his movements are coming out and they're kind of almost like a dance of blades. A dance of blades. I think it's actually really beautiful. Now, again, you'll see he's doing more of a demo here. By the way, these movements are effective. He's kind of moving the blade in a way that you can't follow it, and then they're attacking each other's hands. What I love what he just did. He's using his hat as a distraction because he can blind you with the hat. He can put the hat in your face, and you can also swat the knife away without cutting your hand, so that the hat actually becomes somewhat of a protective and distraction. Who would think of that? Like if you're wearing a hat, who would think, let me take it off and use it to blind the guy and also to swat his knife if it comes near me? Really interesting that they're so aware of everything they have on them. See, you just use the hat to kind of like flick it in the guy's eyes before he's stabbed. So that's a cool little thing to pick up. Like if you're wearing a hat and someone starts a knife fight, it's something you can use. Anyway, kudos to them for being very Italian and making this video, because this again is the most Italian knife fighting video that could ever be made. And they respect each other so much. All right. Well done. Anyway, here we see something else that I really, really love. So what he's doing here is he's discussing keeping your proper form and your movements while going up and down stairs. Now, this is super cool because I'll explain to you why I really like this. One of the main things we often do is we train in a gym. We don't train in an environment. And I've talked about this. Now, I think it's super, super important to be able to train in different environments, because when reality hits, you could be the best kickboxer in the world. But if you've never kickboxed on stairs with someone above you or below you, you don't actually know how to deal with that situation. A lot of your tools go out the window. Here, he's actually training on these kind of more unpredictable situations, or in these more unpredictable situations, which is super smart. And I wish more martial artists did this, said, let's go train on a staircase. Let's go train in an alleyway. I talk about this a lot, on the concrete, on something that's not as safe as a mat. And so if you can keep your structure here, again, I'm sorry, but I want to steal these little drills, right, for deploying and this kind of got me more aware that I should practice deploying more often. With a gun, I do that all the time. I practice my draw, but you don't do it with a knife for some reason. You just don't think about it as much. And he also trains both hands. He even trains when he has one blade with his left and his right. I notice he passes them back and forth. And again, this is something I'll be critical of some Filipino martial artists for. I think that's one of the most important things you can do, because especially with a weapon, your hand that is holding the weapon is at high risk of being damaged. So if you don't train both sides, your hand gets damaged. You have a whole other hand you could be using that could handle the blade. that you're just not training. Here, I had to share this. Again, there's a lot I like here. He's using scissors here. I don't love the 360 rotation movie move, but, again, he's doing a demo. He has to make this exciting. But look how cool that is, training with scissors. This is something in all my years of Filipino martial arts, I've been aware I could pick up scissors, but I've never like drilled with scissors or ran my angles and techniques with scissors. And look at how they're open. Gives you two blades. It's just something very, very interesting. This guy is, in my opinion, he's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I would train with him. And he can spin those scissors around real crazy. And he can turn them. See, I like that. He turns it so that if he doesn't want to stab you with it, he can use it as a punch and hide the blade, or he could put it in front. It's almost like a karambit, which can change from the front to the back. But again, this inspired me to kind of want to pick up scissors and whip them around. And next time you see me do a video, I'm for sure going to have cuts all over my body from whipping scissors around. Now, I want to talk about how they spar, because I actually really like their sparring. So for me, let me just say this off the bat. Hold on. Let's just go into a moment here. So a lot of people say knife fighting is useless because you can't really learn how to protect yourself from a knife. I have to do it in the voice that everyone does. They're like, you can't train against a knife because you're just going to get cut and stabbed. I don't know why they all have that accent in my head, but that's how people sound. And so what I realized, if you look, and I've researched this, if you look at a lot of people who have a knife, who are aggressors, when they come across someone else who has a knife, the entire structure of the fight changes. They automatically do not want to close in and be aggressive anymore. They want to keep range. And so one of the biggest deterrents from being stabbed when someone has a knife is having your own knife. Now, I'm not advocating people go out and buy knives and stab each other, but what I will say is that the structure of a knife fight changes completely when you have two people with knives versus one person who does and one person who doesn't. Because the person who is the aggressor has to now believe that they can also be a victim of getting cut very easily, changes the psychology of the fight. And so what happens in knife versus knife fights, if you watch them, there's different types of knife fights that can occur. You can come across a true psychopath. Okay, now this is the worst case scenario. A true psychopath, his sole intention is to harm you. Now, he's not taking into account that you can harm him back. An attacker like this, whether you are armed or unarmed, will rush you. You see this with police. Even when they're armed, they will rush police. And so when dealing with an attacker like this, you have to actually be ready to use that aggression. You have to be able to dodge that initial hard strike, angle off. It's a lot harder than it looks. And just hope that you can get your knife in and stab them first. But they don't care about self-harm. They will always run at you, even at the expense of their own safety. But in most other cases, you come across a knife fighter or a person who's armed, they have a sense of self-preservation. And because they have a sense of self-preservation, the entire dynamic of the fight changes. And what it changes into is long-range fighting. And so in Illustrissimo, one of the biggest things that they focus on is a long-range fighting. If I have a knife and you have a knife, we're going to attack each other's hands, right? And if you fully commit, if you fully get angry, like that aggressive fighter who loses a sense of self-preservation, and you come in at me, I hope that you are telegraphing enough that I can read it and I can get out the way, parry, whatever it is, and stab you. But until you do that, I am staying at range. And most attackers will do the same thing. They do not want to get stabbed once they see that you have a knife. And so a lot of the sparring that they do reminds me of Illustrissimo sparring, which is knife hand sparring. They are primarily attacking each other's hands. And I love this. That is the most important part of having a ranged weapon, whether it's a knife, a stick, a gun, is using your range. Otherwise, why do you have it? The entire benefit is that you do not need to close in on the person. So you should never close in on the person. And a majority of your sparring, in my opinion, the only realistic way to train it is at this range, this long range where you're staying out. And I'm sorry, put yourself in any of these people's shoes, right? Who are holding a knife and have someone else with a knife in front of them. It's hard, even if you're the aggressor, to drive in and attack the person. You're scared of getting cut, stabbed. And so, again, for me, this is how I like to spend a lot of my time sparring. Those in tight, doce pares, balintawak, those drills that you do in tight where you spend all your time like that. I hope the sound is okay. I'm so far away from the mic. But when you see people spending all their time in that medium close range with a knife, the longest a fight can last in that range is maybe 1 to 3 seconds because someone's going to bleed out. That's just what's going to happen. Someone's going to get cut somewhere vital in that range. But a fight at this range can stay here for a long, long time where you can give a death of 1,000 cuts. These slow little, and someone else just commented on that on my other video, but that's a knife fighting quote, because what you're doing is you're just slowly bleeding them out with these small little slashes on their hand. And if you can get them to drop their knife, end of the fight. So what I like about this guy is he's actually doing a lot of this kind of sparring that I really believe in. There's a lot of videos of him doing it. And his guys look legit good. They look fast. They take almost like a fencing approach, a long step. And this I want to talk about too, because I'm a huge, I've had this debate. I've made videos about this. People tell me they think they know about knife fighting. Always, and this guy captures it perfectly, always lead hand. See, they keep or 90% of the time, short of baiting, your lead hand will have the same lead leg, will have the knife. You will keep the knife as close as possible to your opponent. If you switch and you put your lead leg back, then you are in a defensive posture. You are baiting. That is the only reason to do it. But you see, they keep the blade extended at the person and trying to angle off. I like his movements. I like this kind of sparring. I like this kind of training. With a knife, this is how you want to train. And again, to people who say, well, it doesn't matter in a real situation, this training does actually help you in a real situation, in my view. And these little split-second kind of reactions here. And you see they went to their left hand. Now they're fighting left-handed, which is super cool also because, again, if you have a cut on your right hand, you got to be able to fight with your left hand when you're dealing with weapons. So again, I think, I love knife fighting. I really have a thing for knife fighting. It's kind of the thing I got into in Filipino martial arts the most. But I do think that if you want to learn how to defend yourself with a knife, the smartest way to do it is with a knife. So don't learn how to defend yourself empty-handed against a knife. You can. You should spend some time doing that. But the reality is, if you have the option of carrying a blade, carrying a baton, carrying a weapon, carry one. And that'll help you in a situation where you actually have to deal with an armed assailant. More than any type of empty hand training you could do. Being armed is, and again, another thing that's really nice of when you train knife fighting, in other words, you have a knife and they have a knife, what you are training is that you become trained in the system. Most people who carry knives are not trained in the system to use weapons. I can say this from teaching for many, many years. When I put a knife in someone's hand or a stick in someone's hand on day one, they look like an idiot 99.9% of the time. And it takes time to learn how to use it. It can happen very quickly, but you're at a huge advantage if you've been training with the weapon and they haven't, and you end up in a fight. People, again, aren't expecting you to pull out a weapon when they do. They are expecting to be the aggressor and for you to be the victim. So I'm really glad I found this style. This is a video that I'm really excited to share with everyone. I think it's called the Lajolo knife fighting system. Check it out. I'll put his website on the link below. He has courses and stuff like that. I'm giving him free promotion. I don't care. And it does look like a legitimately cool and unique system that has some kind of real, historical, from his family, which is kind of how all the Filipino martial arts were passed down too. They're generational martial arts. And so I believe him. I don't think he's lying. I like the system. All right. Hope you like this video. Like and subscribe, guys. How many times I got to tell you? How many times? If you've watched more than 2 of my videos, if this is your 3rd video, you have not liked and subscribed and rang the bell, I can't do anything. I always say that. You're too far away. I'm behind a computer, and I'm not going to fly across the world and be mad at you. But I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe. And that's where we're at. All right. Take care.
T'as vu l'angle de choc?
Peu. Voilà.
T'as vu l'angle de choc?
Peu. Voilà. Alors ce qu'on va faire avec Matt, il va nous montrer quelques techniques.
Ouais, bien sûr.
Et puis toi, tu seras là pour donner tes conseils et ton expertise. Donc juste que tu nous démontres déjà théoriquement, sans que j'y aille comme un fou furieux, sur des attaques où forcément tu t'y attends pas, mais là je sais qu'il s'y attend un peu. Voilà, ce genre de choses. D'accord? Donc, je ne sais pas s'il y a différentes formes d'attaque. Après, voilà, il a sa garde masquée. Voilà. Ce genre de choses, voilà. Bon, c'est le genre de choses que je fais aussi. Hein. Après, moi, j'aime bien aussi à utiliser le couteau. De toute façon, là, il n'y a pas 10 000 angles. Voilà, ça va être ce genre de choses. Donc là, voilà, on n'a rien préparé. Tiens, j'ai envie de le faire parce que ça me fait kiffer aussi. Donc on est là, voilà. Et puis, comme dit Charles, on n'est pas obligé de regarder quelqu'un dans les yeux. Et puis au moment où il me le cache comme un fou. Voilà, ce genre de choses. Donc là, j'ai pris mon petit coup de lame. Donc le mec est un peu plus un expert. Le mec est un petit dernier. Voilà. Donc là, voilà, j'ai pris le coup. Hein, à chaque fois, j'ai pris un petit coup en bout de course. Voilà, retrait du buste. Le premier, vas-y, ça fait un retrait. Voilà, on voit que Matt aime bien contre-attaquer. L'autre où tu étais en revers. Donc j'aime bien bloquer un petit peu comme un high kick, hein, comme en boxe. Et puis sur le slash de l'autre côté. Voilà, ça va être ce genre de choses. Donc je pense que c'est à peu près correct ou...
Tout à fait. Bon, en tout cas, la méthode, on part vraiment d'une position de garde qui est assez universelle. C'est qu'on est déjà plus ou moins de face, on protège la partie génitale, comme la méthode de Charles, on fait très attention à protéger aussi ses génitales. Et on fait simplement une position comme ça. On descend le menton pour protéger la gorge. On remonte les épaules. Vaut mieux avoir l'épaule coupée, la joue coupée ou les doigts de toucher, plutôt que ça soit un œil, la carotide.
Bien sûr.
Et l'avantage qu'il y a, c'est qu'on utilise juste le pouce. Comme ça, on est en position comme ça, on n'utilise que le pouce pour protéger le visage, pour prendre un coup ou pour protéger en garde. Après, on part sur, comme beaucoup d'arts martiaux, sur des principes triangulaires. On a ce niveau-là. Et que je suis là, que tu attaques en haut ou en bas, je pourrais me protéger ici. L'épaule, elle monte, je suis bien ancré, le bassin en rétroversion, et je pourrais soit bloquer ici, soit venir frapper là. Soit je peux bloquer là et là. Donc, quelle que soit un peu la surprise,
Tu as la réponse
je
appropriée.
peux bloquer à ce niveau-là. Et je suis là, et si ça vient de l'autre côté, on va travailler différemment, ou changer s'il y a besoin.
D'accord.
Donc c'est très basique et assez instinctif. Vraiment sans fioriture, c'est comme la vraie bagarre de rue. C'est pas beau, c'est pas artistique, c'est brouillon, c'est violent, c'est sale. Et donc, au faut mieux. Avant tout, c'est se préserver.
J'ai remarqué que les blocages de karaté ou en interception sont plus efficaces que les blocages de boxe où finalement, en fait, tu vas rester bloqué, puis tu vas prendre, tu vas donc intercepter, ou comme ils font en kung-fu. Par contre, là où j'ai toujours du mal à le comprendre, c'est quand vous bloquez et contre-attaquez. Donc là, on a vu à l'image que tu as fait ton blocage et ensuite la contre-attaque est venue. J'ai toujours du mal à ce blocage contre-attaque instantané.
Tout simplement, c'est qu'on va dire, pour être assez formel, de défense personnelle, c'est difficile. En gros, dans les termes, il y a une attaque et donc c'est une contre-attaque. Donc toi, tu te retrouves à attaquer aussi. Parce que bloquer, se défendre, on n'a pas le cardio, le concept du stress aussi, de l'agression. Donc c'est de cesser l'agression le plus vite possible. Donc bloquer, du moins, par exemple, quand tu attaques ici, c'est de bloquer ici, laisser un espace. Comme tu expliquais, rétroversion, et ce que je vais faire, c'est frapper à ce niveau-là, de l'épaule, ou rentrer pour te déborder. Si tu faisais une attaque avec l'épaule, je suis ici, là. Frapper ici, ça déstabilise énormément. Et après, je rentre, je déborde l'individu, je travaille dessus.
Pour qu'il soit sur l'avant, quoi. L'expert va nous dire que ça va engourdir le bras, mais c'est peut-être plutôt pour créer une onde de choc, pour pas que l'autre continue son attaque.
C'est frapper, donc on va frapper le blocage. Comme ça se fait aussi en punch accéléré, c'est pas des blocages, c'est vraiment des frappes qui sont faites sur l'agression. Et après, il faut déborder l'individu. Parce que c'est vrai que toi, l'individu a le couteau, il a l'intention de te nuire.
Il va en mettre plusieurs.
Il va en mettre plusieurs.
Remontre-moi ta garde, là, face caméra, s'il te plaît.
Donc, je suis à ce niveau-là, les épaules remontées, la gorge protégée. On peut mettre les pouces à ce niveau-là. Tranquille, simplement juste poser à ce niveau-là.
T'es droitier ou gaucher, excuse-moi?
Je suis gaucher, mais je travaille tout le temps à droite, donc ça va. On est protégé ici. Et on est simplement, on travaille à ce niveau-là. Groupé. Et s'il y a besoin, on vient bloquer ici.
Fais voir un petit drill de blocage qui pourrait être intéressant.
Une frappe comme ça, un blocage comme ça, qui serait le mieux, parce qu'en même temps, tu bloques avec ton...
Je bloque et je rentre avec l'avant-bras.
Si le coup viendrait là, on bloquerait à ce niveau-là, on amortirait au mieux possible, et on essaierait de venir travailler en crochet dans les coudes flottantes, ou en se rapprochant le plus possible, frapper avec les coudes.
Donc, tiens, mets-toi face caméra encore. Fais-nous quelques drills de blocage et de contre-attaque.
Alors je peux imaginer qu'ils viennent de deux côtés. Ils viennent là. On va travailler. Et après, comme c'est une méthode d'escrime, on travaille avec un couteau pliant. Alors c'est dans la méthode Lajolo, on travaille avec un couteau pliable parce que c'est difficile à avoir, à l'extraire, et justement dans un endroit un peu clos, c'est plus difficile. Et le principe, quelqu'un attaque, je bloque, je frappe, je crée la distance, et les principes d'escrime, la mesure, la distance, la contre-mesure, prendre la distance, extraire le couteau. Donc le couteau là est placé à la ceinture. Pour X raison, si je me fais déborder par l'individu, je me retrouve ici. Si je ne peux pas sortir ma lame. Donc le principe, soit je travaille avec la main gauche, soit sinon la main qui est à la ceinture, et je passe là, et je calme. Et ça, simplement, le petit bruit, et de voir une vraie lame.
Ça va calmer le bonhomme.
Ça calme assez.
Bien sûr.
Après, il y a tout un travail de drill que l'on fait, de maîtrise de couteau.
Pour être à l'aise avec.
Pour être à l'aise avec.
Donc des blocages instinctifs qui vont venir anticiper, intercepter le coup, reculer la zone qui est ciblée en prenant compte de la longe supplémentaire que le couteau a. Et voilà. Et éventuellement mettre une contre-attaque, rentrer au corps à corps, bloquer le bras. Je sais que Michael Louz, il aime beaucoup faire ça, qui vient aussi de votre style. Ça, tu aimes bien aussi bloquer le bras?
Pour ma part, je vais pas prendre le temps de bloquer parce que ne sachant pas la tenue, les conditions, après le fait de glisser, de louper avec le bras, je préférais frapper et déborder. Soit à main nue, soit au poing, soit au coude, soit à la tête s'il y a besoin. C'est ma survie avant tout, ou celle des pratiquants.
Bah pendant longtemps, dans les arts martiaux, ils nous montraient, voilà, le coup arrive, on va bloquer le coup, on va exercer une clé et récupérer l'arme. Aujourd'hui, je trouve que le paradigme a changé. On sera plus dans un blocage fort, rentrer, frapper, frapper, frapper. Donc maintenant, les experts préconisent de la frappe sur quelqu'un qui menace au couteau.
Tout à fait. C'est exactement le principe de la méthode Lajolo qui est pratiquée. Oui.
Donc on va résumer succinctement parce que ça a l'air assez simple entre guillemets. Ouais. C'est une garde où on va être croisé ici pour protéger tiens, je vais essayer de comprendre en même temps. Donc des trucs comme ça là où je vais venir bloquer, peu importe là si je frappe, voilà. Si c'est de l'autre côté, boum, ce genre de choses, pourquoi pas. J'extrapole. Et si ça vient en bas, boum, ce genre de choses où je vais puncher.
Qui vient frapper ici pour perturber. Voilà, t'as vu l'onde de choc.
Oui, bien sûr.
Donc en plus tu me débordes.
Donc voilà, c'est pas des choses dont j'ai l'habitude, mais je vois la chose. Moi, c'est vrai que j'aime bien avoir ma garde masquée comme ça. Je me rappelle que Charles disait, vous mettez pas comme ça, voilà. Ce sera plutôt comme ça.
Et c'est vrai que c'est simplement un truc tout simple. Quand on protège, on va faire attention ici pour protéger les yeux.
Oui.
Alors on va pas exposer bien sûr tout l'avant-bras, on va avoir une garde assez fermée parce que je préfère perdre la main.
Bien sûr.
Perdre un doigt plutôt qu'un œil ou la gorge.
D'accord.
Donc on va rester assez groupé à ce niveau-là et on va travailler comme ça. Et voilà, et si ça prend, ça prend. Voilà.
Ouais. Mais
il faut vraiment accepter que s'il y a un couteau, on n'en sort malheureusement jamais indemne.
Mais je vois qu'en général, tu interceptes. Tu vas vers le coup, et ça c'est en dernier recours.
Voilà,
tu protèges les zones sensibles.
On this episode of Follow Your Past, a single mom crosses the globe to discover her family's connection to pirates, royalty,
Wow,
and one of history's greatest heroes,
that is amazing.
battling buccaneers.
Arg, matey. Awesome.
I'll reveal her link to one of America's most famous founding fathers.
Benvenuti in Italia. I'm in Venice, Italy, and I'm about to meet Robin.
First up, we're going back in time roughly 1,200 years to find out what Robin's family was doing here. Before canning or refrigeration, salt was a popular way to preserve food. By harvesting salt, Stefano could tap into fierce demand, but it was back they wanted.
Hey, allora?
And when their risks paid off, they changed history. But centuries earlier, her ancestors helped found Venice, Italy. And now we're headed to the year 1000 to meet a different ancestor who risked his life to save the floating city.
Your 33rd great-grandfather's name.
Between for luxury goods from the Islamic world to Europe. But the ambitious Doge wanted his city to be a political player in the region as well. There was just one thing holding him back.
Pirates were attacking the merchants who were shipping their goods in Venice.
I was not thinking pirates. Arg, matey.
Pirates lived on islands along the Adriatic Sea and sailed out to prey on passing ships. If the trade route wasn't safe, Venice and Pietro could lose power, and the economy could collapse.
Pietro decided to wage a war against piracy here in the Adriatic Sea.
In May of the year 1000, Pietro gathered his men and a fleet of ships and set sail to battle the pirates.
So how do you fight pirates?
Hey, food. Yeah. Yeah.
With knives.
Want to learn how?
Yeah.
Danilo Rossi is a weapons historian and a master of the Italian martial art of knife fighting. Mark Antonio is his student.
Knife fencing is elegance. for Italian people is an art.
Okay.
And it's important, control of your blade.
Everyone thinks it was swords or swashbuckling.
Pietro and his men had swords and other weapons, but when hand-to-hand combat got intense, it was always good to have a trusty dagger at the ready.
Now I have 2 rubber knives.
Rubber knives, don't worry.
No problem.
I know, I saw
Take
your
it easy.
face. You thought, am I gonna have to fight with a real knife?
To inflict maximum damage, knife fighters like Pietro attacked certain vulnerable areas.
It's so very dangerous, okay? Not this, okay? But 1, 2, 3.
He would go for the jugular, literally, slashing key targets like muscles and arteries.
9.
Ooh.
Now cut. Step 1 and second step 2.
Pietro would use dance-like moves to dodge his enemy.
2. Yes, 1, 2. Yes, 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
and 4.
This is to protect your eyes.
Yes.
No,
Not
to
get
look
your hair.
cool.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yes, of course.
Their knife fighting is like fencing. It was actually very beautiful.
In the spring of the year 1000, Robin's ancestor Pietro and his men took to the Adriatic Sea to do battle with the pirates.
Ready? 1 and 2.
With knives and swords in hand, they went after the pirates' island strongholds.
Okay, come on, let's go.
Can I
Cut
run
my
away?
hand. Come on, let's go. Hop.
What am I saying now?
Hop. Yeah, nice.
He totally went for it.
So it was really difficult at first, but the kill instinct just takes over and you just want to win.
That was good. Oh, that was good.
Oh,
That
I'm
was
the winner.
fatal one right there. Back in the day, either you're a skilled fighter or you're probably dead.
Robin may have lost today, but Pietro and his fleet beat back the pirates in a battle and seized their islands. It was a monumental historic victory for Venice and for Pietro. And a branch of that family came from Italy.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. Looking at all of the relatives that I've met this past week, they've all worked really hard for something they believed in. If you want good things in life and if you want to make this world a better place, you have to work for it. It's hard to process.
Every time you pull out a dollar bill now.
Yeah, my girls are gonna think that's so cool.
Следуя итальянской традиции, искусство боя на коротких клинках изучают во всем мире. Знаменитый мастер, создатель системы Лajolo, Даниэло Росси Лайола ди Кассана посетил Нижний Новгород с мастер-классами по его авторской методике «Ножевой бой. Искусство или спорт». Узнаем в сюжете Валерии Стародумовой и Гомоновой Елены.
Научиться азам владения техникой ножевого боя по системе Лайола у ее создателя в Нижний Новгород приехали фехтовальщики со всей России. Но перенять легкость и непринужденность движений маэстро ученикам было непросто, ведь секреты фехтования в семье Даниэла Росси передавались из поколения.